Well, hello, guys, and welcome back to this very special episode of my series of What If scenarios. This is the first time on my channel that I'm covering a movie that's just come out in 2024. So far, everything from shows and movies that I've covered have always been out for at least a year. But now, this movie has just come out and it's all brand new just for you guys. But for today's episode, I wanted to take a different spin. Instead of following one character's arc as a what if scenario, I wanted to touch on the whole storyline in general. So today's what if scenario includes both Smile and Smile 2. This scenario being, what if the curse is spread through different emotions, not just smiles, such as fear, anger, sadness, etc. And just a heads up, this movie's just come out, so the quality might not be the best. So just focus on the voiceover rather than listening. Pretend that it's a podcast. Let's dive into it. So before we jump into our what if scenario, I wanted to take a moment to catch everyone up on the world of Smile and Smile 2. If you haven't seen the first movie, here's the basic premise. Smile revolves around a deadly curse that spreads from person to person through horrifying encounters. It's a psychological horror where those cursed experience terrifying hallucinations and overwhelming sense of dread, leading to their inevitable death unless they can pass the curse to someone else. You can tell that someone is cursed by their out-of-place smile. Now, what if Smile 2 threw a curveball and the curse didn't just spread through smiles? What if it could manifest through any powerful emotion, such as anger, sadness, fear, or even joy? Let's break this down and look at how this would completely change the plot. In the original film, a smile is the clear indicator of someone being cursed, which is creepy because it takes something that should be comforting or pleasant and twists it into something terrifying. But if the curse could take the form of any intense emotion, things would get a lot more complicated. Imagine characters who can't trust any emotional response. In this alternate Smile 2, a fit of rage, a burst of tears, or even a moment of laughter could be a sign that someone is cursed. The curse would evolve into something much harder to detect, which would make it even more sinister. Paranoia would spread like wildfire because anyone showing any strong emotion could be a threat. You wouldn't just be scared of someone smiling anymore. The film could lean into this tension, creating scenes where characters desperately try to suppress their emotions. Picture a moment where a character starts to cry after losing a loved one and everyone around them freezes. They would all be wondering, is this grief or is this the curse manifesting? It adds layers of complexity because it's no longer about spotting a creepy smile. It's about being on edge every time someone feels anything strongly. In this scenario, characters would face an impossible dilemma: suppress your emotions or risk being cursed. This could push them to the brink emotionally and psychologically. The horror would shift from external threats like the looming curse or the deadly consequences of it to something much more personal and intimate. Like I was saying, a character going through a traumatic event like the loss of a loved one, normally they'd break down and cry and express their grief, but in this world, doing that would put their life in danger. They'd have to hold everything in, which could lead to an explosive emotional breakdown later in the film. This kind of internal conflict adds a new layer to the horror. It's not just about survival anymore, it's about losing your very humanity. The inability to express basic human emotions could become the ultimate torture. In addition, a character could also be consumed by their emotion. If someone gives in to the rage, for example, they might lash out and be out of control, putting everyone else at risk. The curse would become a reflection of very strong emotions, with the film exploring how dangerous it is when people can't control or process their feelings. In this reimagined scenario, instead of just seeing eerie smiles, the curse takes the form of heightened and uncontrollable emotions. Imagine each character experiencing a different emotion that pushes them to their breaking point. This twist would make the curse much more chaotic and difficult to predict, as it no longer manifests through a simple visual cue like a smile, but through an internal emotional struggle. We have the rage-fueled destruction, which is anger. Anger would be a particularly terrifying emotion for the cursed to latch onto. Imagine a character cursed by rage. Every minor irritation would fuel a fire inside them until it erupts into full-blown violence. This individual would struggle to contain their fury, and in doing so, might end up lashing out at everyone around them, including those they care about. Their path to self-destruction would be paved with collateral damage, broken relationships, ruined lives, and physical devastation. The horror would stem not only from the curse but from the characters' increasing paranoia as they see their relationships unravel before their eyes. People around them would become terrified of setting them off, creating this unbearable tension in every interaction. This movie could have scenes where the character is visibly shaken, gripping onto anything nearby to avoid giving into the fury burning inside them, knowing that once it erupts, there's no going back. This scenario reflects the very real dangers of uncontrolled anger and how it can spiral into something uncontrollable. The curse would take a raw human emotion and magnify it to terrifying extremes. Our second emotion is sadness. On the flip side, a character overtaken by sadness would experience a much slower, more agonizing descent. This individual might begin by feeling just a hint of melancholy, but as the curse takes hold, that sadness would deepen until they're consumed by an overwhelming sense of hopelessness. Imagine scenes where this character can't even bring themselves to leave their bed, their tears never ending, their world becoming darker with each passing day. The character would feel suffocated by their sorrow, like they're trapped in quicksand, sinking deeper no matter how hard they try to pull themselves out. Their friends and loved ones might try to help, but their efforts would be in vain, because the curse has amplified the sadness to such degree that it is impossible to overcome without outside intervention. This plotline could touch on themes of depression and emotional isolation. The movie could show how the character's inability to cope with their sadness pushes them towards self-destruction. Their descent into despair would serve as a haunting reminder of how dangerous it is when people feel like they have no escape from their own emotions. Perhaps the most unsettling twist would be if the curse manifested through uncontrollable joy, laughter. When it's genuine, it's supposed to be healing, but in this case, it turns grotesque. Picture a character who can't stop laughing even in the most inappropriate or dire situations. Their joy would start to look more and more disturbing, forced, hollow, and eventually terrifying. As their laughter continues, it could begin to physically harm them, leading to exhaustion, shortness of breath, and even hallucinations. The other characters would be horrified watching as this person seems happy on the surface but is clearly in agony beneath the mask of forced joy. The scenario plays with this idea that even positive emotions, when taken to extremes, can become dangerous. The cursed individual might be laughing uncontrollably while witnessing something horrific, further blurring the lines between joy and terror. A key strength to this what-if scenario is the unpredictability it brings to the narrative. In the original Smile films, the characters know to fear the sight of a smile, which creates a constant sense of dread as they look for that one clear sign. But if the curse spreads through different emotions, the characters and the audience can never be sure what to watch out for. One character might go through the entire film seemingly unaffected until, in a moment of uncontrollable anger, they snap and give in to the curse. Another might spiral into despair in a more slow-burning psychological horror. And yet another could be laughing through the whole movie, only for that laughter to turn deadly. Each cursed individual would represent a different emotional extreme, creating varied outcomes and making the movie feel like a psychological minefield. What's good about this approach is that it allows emotions to become literal weapons. It's not just the fear of death that drives the horror, but the terror of losing control over the most fundamental parts of being human. This would make for a much more personal kind of horror, where the characters are their own worst enemies. For example, the character cursed by rage might destroy their home in a fit or fury, only to be left alone in the wreckage they created, realizing too late that they've driven everyone away. The sadness-ridden character might isolate themselves so completely that they're unreachable, while the one overcome by forced joy might push away those trying to help. In real life, people are often told to control their emotions, but this scenario would take that idea to its extreme, showing just how devastating it can be when emotions are allowed to run wild. To have a curse that spreads through different emotions would open up endless possibilities for storytelling in Smile 2, or potentially another movie. It would elevate the horror from simple jump scares and creepy smiles to something much more profound and unsettling. By focusing on the characters' internal struggles with their emotions, the film could tap into deeper themes of mental health, emotional repression, and the human condition. The shift in this case would not only keep audiences on edge, unsure of how each character might react, but it would also create a far more personal and psychologically complex experience. The emotions we all feel every day, anger, sadness, joy, would become the source of fear, making the curse all the more relatable and terrifying. But tell me, would you be able to face your emotions if they could kill you? Or would you, like the characters in the imagined version of Smile 2, be destroyed by the very feelings you've always taken for granted?